Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where, out of nowhere, you felt deeply alone, even when you weren't? Like something inside you suddenly tightened, and you couldn't explain why? Maybe it happened during a quiet moment, after an argument, or right when you were supposed to feel happy. And instead of peace, you felt this ache, this invisible emptiness that didn't match your reality. It's easy to think it's just stress, or maybe you tell yourself, I'm just being too sensitive. But what if that feeling is actually something much older, something from a part of you that you've been carrying, quietly, all this time? What if your inner child, the version of you who once needed comfort, protection, and love, still feels abandoned, and you didn't even realize it? Because here's the truth. Growing up doesn't magically erase what hurt you. Time doesn't heal what was never acknowledged. And strength? It's not the same thing as healing. You learned how to survive. You learned how to keep going. But maybe, just maybe, you also learned how to leave yourself behind in the process. No one tells you this. Emotional abandonment doesn't just happen when someone leaves you. It happens every time you're left alone with your feelings, every time you were told to stop crying, to stop needing, to stop being too much. You stopped asking, you stopped feeling, and eventually, you stopped showing up for the parts of you that still needed care. But here's where things get even deeper. You might still be doing this today. You might be the one abandoning yourself now. You overfunction. You say yes when you want to say no. You avoid rest because it feels wrong. You love people who don't love you back in the way you deserve. And you wonder, why do I feel so disconnected from myself? It's not because you're broken. It's because there's a version of you, a younger, more vulnerable, more innocent version that's still waiting. Not for someone else, for you. Waiting for you to stop running, to stop dismissing your pain, and to finally say, I see you, I hear you, I'm not going anywhere. In this video, we're going to go beyond the surface. We're going to talk about the emotional patterns that most people carry without knowing. We'll uncover the subtle signs that your inner child still feels abandoned. We'll talk about how those early wounds show up in your adult life, in your relationships, your choices, even in the way you treat yourself. But more than that, we're going to begin something powerful. A quiet return, a reconnection, a remembering. Because healing doesn't come from pretending you're fine. It comes from telling the truth and then learning how to love the parts of you that never stopped waiting to be chosen. So before we dive in, I want to ask you one thing. Are you willing, just for these next few minutes, to listen to the child you used to be? To stay just a little longer instead of turning away? If the answer is yes, then let's begin. Some kids had the chance to just be kids. They played, made mistakes, got hugs, and learned as they went. But maybe your story was different. Maybe you had to act like an adult while you were still just a child. Life didn't slow down for you, and no one stopped to ask if you were okay. You had to stay strong, act mature, and take care of things way before you were ready. And now, even as a grown-up, you might feel like something inside you never really got to live. Think about it. Maybe at 8 years old, you already knew how to stay quiet so no one got upset. Maybe you were the one calming your mom down or looking after your younger siblings. That's a lot for a child. You didn't get to explore, have fun, or feel safe. Instead, you became good at hiding your feelings and pretending everything was fine. You learned to smile when you wanted to cry and to stay calm when everything inside was falling apart. There's a big difference between growing up and being forced to grow up. When a child is supported and loved, they grow strong in a healthy way. But when they're left to figure things out alone, they grow up feeling tired, confused, and alone. If you had to grow up too fast, maybe you still carry that weight. Maybe you don't even know how to relax or feel joy. Maybe part of you still feels like you're waiting for the childhood you never had. People might tell you, you're so strong, like it's a compliment. But that strength came from surviving, not from being cared for. And there's a big difference. One kind of strength makes you soft and safe. The other makes you hard and numb. Maybe you became the responsible one, the one who holds everything together. But deep inside, you wish someone would look at you and say, you don't have to be strong right now. And maybe that's where real healing begins, when you stop pretending everything's fine, when you stop rushing and start asking, what did I miss? Maybe what you really needed was comfort, kindness, or someone to tell you that it was okay to just be a kid. And the truth is, it's never too late to give yourself that. Because when you start listening to the younger version of you, something powerful happens. And that brings us to something even deeper, something most people don't realize they've needed all along. When you were little, you didn't always have the words to say what you needed. Sometimes you just wanted a hug, a calm voice, someone to notice you were hurting without you having to explain. But instead, maybe you were told to stop crying, to be strong, to move on. So you did. You learned to keep things to yourself, and over time, you stopped looking for comfort, because deep down, you didn't believe it was really there for you. You might not have even realized you were missing it. That's how childhood works. We adapt to what's around us. If no one taught you that it's okay to ask for help, you probably stopped asking. If no one ever sat beside you and said, "It's okay to feel this way," then maybe you started thinking your feelings were wrong. And without even noticing, you grew up believing that you had to handle pain alone, not because you wanted to, but because no one showed you another way. Comfort isn't a luxury, it's a basic need. A child needs to feel held, heard, and safe. And when that doesn't happen, the body learns to stay on high alert, always watching, always bracing. Even now, as an adult, that feeling might still be there, like you always have to be okay, even when you're not. You push through, you keep going. But sometimes, all you really want is someone to tell you, "I see you, you're not alone." Think about your reactions today. Do you downplay your pain? Feel guilty for needing rest? Avoid sharing your feelings because you don't want to bother anyone? That's not random. That's learned. And unlearning it takes time. It starts with letting yourself receive what you never got. It might feel weird at first, accepting care, slowing down, letting someone be there for you. But it's not weakness. It's healing. You don't have to go back in time to get the comfort you missed. You can start offering it to yourself now. And the more you do, the more that younger part of you begins to feel safe. That tightness in your chest loosens. That heavy feeling softens. You begin to realize that comfort isn't something you have to earn. It's something you always deserved. And once that door opens, something else starts to shift inside. Some kids worry about school, games, or what cartoon to watch next. But if you were the adult in your house, your mind was full of things that no child should carry. You watched over your siblings. You managed your parents' emotions. You cleaned up messes, emotional and literal. You were the one calming things down, taking care of others, and making sure things didn't fall apart. While your friends were learning to ride bikes, you were learning how to survive storms inside your own home. No one asked if you were okay. They just leaned on you. And you became the strong one, the helper, the problem solver. You learned to stay quiet, to put your needs last, to be the mature one. But that maturity came at a high cost. You didn't get to feel carefree or protected. You became the anchor of your home. But who held you in place? It's no wonder that even now, you might struggle to let go or trust others to take the lead. When a child steps into an adult role too early, it changes everything. You might have developed amazing skills, being reliable, organized, emotionally sharp, but deep inside, you also may carry exhaustion, resentment, and a deep loneliness you never learned to name. And that can show up later in life as burnout, overgiving, or always feeling like you have to be in control. Not because you want to, but because it's the only way you ever knew how to feel safe. If you're always the one people depend on, who do you depend on? If you're always keeping the peace, who helps bring peace to you? These are hard questions, but necessary ones, because you deserve to feel supported, not just needed. One small step you can take today is to ask yourself, where in my life am I still parenting others more than I'm parenting myself? The answers might surprise you and also set you free. And as you start to reconnect with the child you once were, you may realize that all that silence, all that pressure, all those years of holding it together, left marks that are still shaping how you deal with conflict today. Which leads right into something that most people carry without even noticing. If you were a sensitive child, you probably felt things deeply: joy, pain, fear, love. But maybe every time you showed those feelings, someone told you to toughen up or stop being dramatic. Over time, you started to believe that being emotional meant being weak. You learned to hide your tears, laugh things off, or pretend you didn't care. But inside, you did care. You always cared. And that sensitivity didn't go away. It just went underground. Many sensitive kids grow up with the message that their emotions are too much, too intense, too soft, too inconvenient. But being sensitive doesn't mean you're broken. It means you notice. You notice what others miss. You feel what others avoid. That's a gift, not a flaw. The problem isn't your sensitivity. The problem is the world didn't know how to hold it, so you were left trying to hold it all by yourself. Maybe now you're the kind of person who senses shifts in the room before anyone speaks. Maybe you feel deeply affected by a sad story or by someone else's pain, and maybe you sometimes beat yourself up for it, thinking you shouldn't feel this much. But who says? Feeling deeply is part of being human. And numbing yourself only takes you further from the part of you that's most alive and connected. Instead of pushing that part of you away, what if you embraced it? Being sensitive doesn't mean being weak. It means being tuned in. Start small. Notice how certain environments affect you. Protect your peace. Spend time with people who respect your emotions instead of mocking them. And most of all, speak kindly to yourself. You were never too much. You just grew up in a world that was emotionally underdeveloped. And once you begin to accept this part of yourself, something powerful happens. You start to realize that feeling is not just safe, it's necessary. But of course, no one told you that back then. In fact, most people never told you this next truth either. Maybe you learned early that silence was safer, that speaking up could lead to shouting, rejection, or someone getting angry. So, little by little, you stopped sharing. You kept your thoughts to yourself, hid your feelings, and became really good at pretending everything was fine. Not because you didn't feel, but because you felt too much, and you didn't know what to do with all that emotion, especially when the people around you didn't know either. For some kids, keeping quiet wasn't a choice. It was a way to survive. You avoided asking for help, avoided expressing sadness, and especially avoided anger. Because deep down, you learned that being too emotional could make things worse. You became the peacemaker, the one who didn't rock the boat. But while that kept things calm on the outside, it created storms on the inside. All that unspoken pain didn't disappear. It just found other ways to show up later. Maybe now you struggle to say what you really feel in your relationships. Maybe you're scared of conflict, or you avoid hard conversations. That's not weakness. That's a survival habit that never got updated. It's like your nervous system is still stuck in a loop. Don't speak, stay small, keep the peace. But here's the thing. You can't build deep connection without being seen, and you can't be seen without using your voice. One step you can take is to notice when you hold back. What do you stop yourself from saying? What feelings do you push down out of fear of upsetting someone? Start there. Write it out. Say it in a voice note. Speak it to a trusted friend. You don't have to share everything all at once, but every time you choose honesty over silence, you're building safety for your younger self, one word at a time. And the more you allow yourself to speak, the more you'll notice something interesting. Your sensitivity. Yes, that part you once tried to hide was never a weakness. In fact, it might just be one of your biggest gifts. But let's talk about that, because it's a truth many people spend their whole lives trying to unlearn. Growing up, you probably had big emotions, but no one showed you what to do with them. Maybe you were told to stop crying or get over it. Maybe when you felt scared or sad, people ignored it, laughed, or punished you. So, little by little, you learned a dangerous message, that feelings aren't safe, that emotions should be hidden, that if you show too much, something bad might happen. And that belief? It sticks around for years. When you're taught that emotions are dangerous, your body starts to react every time one shows up. A lump in your throat becomes panic. A tear becomes shame. You don't even mean to. It's just how your system learned to survive. You disconnect from your heart and live mostly in your head, always trying to figure things out instead of feeling them. But some things aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be felt and released. Maybe you've noticed that it's hard for you to cry, or that when someone asks how you feel, you freeze. That's not weird. That's your nervous system doing what it was trained to do. The good news? You can retrain it. You can start by simply sitting with a feeling without judging it, saying to yourself, "It's okay that I feel this right now." That one sentence can start to undo years of emotional silence. Feelings aren't dangerous. They're messages. They tell you what matters, what hurts, what needs care. Letting yourself feel doesn't make you weak, out of control, or dramatic. It makes you real. And the more you allow space for your emotions, the more you begin to feel truly alive. Not just functioning, but living. Because being human isn't about always being fine. It's about being honest, open, and present with yourself. And here's the thing. When no one taught you how to feel, they also didn't teach you how to receive love in a way that felt safe and real. Which leads us right into something many people carry without even realizing. Maybe love didn't come freely in your childhood. Maybe it showed up only when you behaved, helped out, got good grades, or kept everyone happy. You started to connect love with performance. Affection wasn't something you just got. It was something you had to earn. And when love feels like a reward, not a right, it leaves deep marks. You begin to believe that your worth is tied to how useful, kind, or easy to be around you are. As a child, you might have done whatever it took to keep the peace, smiled when you were sad, stayed out of the way, took care of others. You became good at being good, because deep down, you feared that if you messed up, love would disappear. And even now, that fear might still whisper in your ear. Maybe that's why you overextend yourself, avoid conflict, or struggle to say no, because somewhere inside, you still think love is something you can lose. When love feels conditional, you start to believe you are conditional. You might hide parts of yourself, your anger, your messiness, your sadness, because you think those parts make you less lovable. But real love doesn't work like that. Real love holds space for the full you, not just the convenient or polite version. And it's okay if no one taught you that. You can begin teaching it to yourself now. Start by noticing where in your life you feel you have to earn love. Do you feel pressure to be perfect? To be easygoing even when you're hurting? What would it be like to show up as you are, without editing yourself? That's a practice. And yes, it's scary, but it's also how healing begins. When you stop abandoning yourself just to keep others close, something powerful happens. You get closer to you. And when you realize love shouldn't have to be earned, another question comes up, one that hits even deeper. If no one taught you how to feel loved, who taught you how to handle pain? Pain is part of life, but if no one showed you how to deal with it, you probably ended up just trying to avoid it. Maybe when you were hurting, people told you to get over it or stop being so sensitive. Maybe no one even noticed, so you found ways to hide your pain. You smiled through it. You distracted yourself. You became strong on the outside while feeling lost on the inside. And now, when pain shows up, your first instinct might still be to run from it or to shut it down completely. As kids, we look to the adults around us to show us what to do when life hurts. But if they ignored their own pain, chances are they ignored yours too. So you didn't learn how to process grief, sadness, disappointment, or fear. You learned to push it all down, to stay busy, to pretend you were fine. And the problem with that? Pain doesn't go away just because we hide it. It waits. And eventually, it comes back stronger. Maybe today, when something painful happens, you freeze, or you feel numb, or you try to fix things quickly so you don't have to sit with what hurts. That's not failure. That's an old pattern playing itself out. But here's the truth. You don't have to run anymore. You can learn new ways to face pain. Gentle ways, safe ways. It starts with allowing yourself to feel something small and reminding yourself, I can be with this. I don't have to be afraid of it. Handling pain doesn't mean drowning in it. It means being honest with yourself about what hurts and offering yourself care instead of judgment. That could be journaling, talking to someone, taking a walk, crying in the shower. Whatever helps your body release what it's been carrying for too long. You don't have to know all the steps. You just have to take one and then another. Healing happens slowly, but it does happen. And the more you learn to hold your pain, the more you'll see something that's often hidden beneath it. A version of you that's been lost in all the noise and responsibilities. And that takes us to something that might explain why you felt so disconnected from yourself all this time. When no one was there to help you, you learned to help yourself. You figured things out. You stayed strong. You carried the weight no one else wanted to carry. And over time, doing everything alone became your normal. You didn't ask for help, not because you didn't need it, but because you didn't believe it would come. You got so used to holding it all that letting go started to feel unsafe. But in the process, you also lost pieces of yourself. You became the one who always shows up for others, who gets things done, who keeps the world spinning. But what about you? Who shows up for you? The truth is, when you're always the strong one, you stop checking in with your own needs. You start ignoring your limits, your dreams, even your feelings. And slowly, without realizing it, you drift away from who you really are. Until one day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. Maybe you don't know what you like anymore. Maybe joy feels distant, or silence feels uncomfortable. That's a sign that the version of you who always copes, fixes, and pushes through is tired. Not weak, just tired. And beneath that tiredness is someone real. Someone who's been waiting to rest, to feel, to come back home to themselves. That part of you still exists. It's just buried under years of survival mode. Start by asking simple questions. What do I want right now? What makes me feel alive? What part of me have I been ignoring? You don't have to change everything at once. But giving yourself permission to matter, to really matter, is how you begin to reconnect. Your needs aren't a problem. Your feelings aren't a burden. You've been strong for so long. Now it's time to be whole. And when you start looking at life through that lens, another deep truth surfaces, one that explains why you still carry guilt and fear anytime you lean on someone else for support. If you grew up thinking your needs were too much, it makes sense that now you're afraid to take up space. You hesitate before asking for help. You second-guess your feelings. You apologize for needing support, as if just being human is something to feel guilty about. But that fear? It didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of feeling like your presence had to be small in order to keep others comfortable. Maybe every time you were vulnerable as a child, someone got upset, ignored you, or made you feel selfish, so you learned to hold it in, to handle things alone, to be low maintenance. And even now, that habit follows you. You might tell yourself, they have enough going on, or I don't want to bother anyone. But deep down, you're really saying, I don't think I'm allowed to need anything. But you are allowed. Needing support doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. No one gets through life without leaning on someone. And yet, here you are, trying to carry the whole world while pretending it doesn't weigh you down. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair to your heart. Because behind that fear of being a burden is a longing to be seen, held, and reminded that you matter, just as you are. Start small. When someone asks how you're doing, tell the truth, just a little more than usual. Let yourself say, actually, I've been struggling a bit. And notice what happens. You might be surprised at how safe it can feel when you stop shrinking yourself. You're not asking for too much. You never were. You were just taught that your needs didn't fit the moment, and now it's time to unlearn that. Because if that fear isn't healed, it has a way of repeating itself, especially in relationships, where old wounds sneak in and make love feel complicated. And that takes us right into something many people feel, but don't always understand. Have you ever asked yourself, why does this keep happening to me? You find yourself in similar situations, feeling ignored, unseen, unappreciated. No matter who you're with, different faces, same pain. It's not because you're broken, it's because your heart is still trying to resolve something old. We repeat what's familiar, even when it hurts, especially when it reminds us of how love once felt when we were young. If you grew up feeling like love had to be earned, you might choose people who make you prove yourself. If you weren't allowed to express feelings, you might feel drawn to people who stay emotionally distant, not because you want that, but because it matches what love looked like back then. That old emotional script is still playing in the background, quietly shaping the choices you make today. And the more you repeat those old patterns, the more it feels like you're stuck in a loop. You give and give, hoping someone will finally see you. You avoid conflict, fearing it'll make them leave. You become the easy one in the relationship, while your needs slowly disappear. But love shouldn't feel like a test. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink, to chase, or to suffer in silence. Breaking the cycle starts with noticing it. Pause and ask, does this remind me of something I felt in childhood? Am I trying to fix something old through this new person? That kind of awareness is powerful. It doesn't fix everything overnight, but it gives you choice. And choice is the first step to freedom. You don't have to keep living the same story. You can write a new one. But before that new story can grow, there's one more habit that needs attention. One that's so subtle, most people don't even realize they're doing it. Sometimes you're so focused on keeping things together that you forget to ask yourself, How do I feel right now? You rush through the day, take care of everyone else, and ignore the quiet signals your body sends. It's not that you don't have emotions. It's that you've learned to push them aside before they even reach the surface. You've gotten so good at surviving that you don't even notice when you're hurting. Maybe you feel numb instead of sad, restless instead of angry, tired instead of overwhelmed. That's emotional abandonment, not from others, but from yourself. It's when you turn away from what you feel because it seems inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unsafe. And most of the time, it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like being fine all the time, like always smiling, like brushing things off because it's not that bad. But here's the thing. Emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They wait, and they come back through anxiety, burnout, tension, or even illness. Your emotions are trying to talk to you, not ruin your day. They want to be heard, not fixed. And when you abandon them, you abandon the part of yourself that's trying to heal. Real connection with yourself begins the moment you stop running and start listening. Try checking in with yourself, even just once a day. Ask, what am I feeling underneath this stress? Write it down, sit with it. Be kind to yourself when it's uncomfortable. You don't need to explain your feelings, justify them, or make them go away. You just need to be present with them. That's how you rebuild trust with yourself. That's how your inner world starts to feel safe again. And once you realize that self-abandonment has been part of the problem, another truth comes into view, something that often gets misread as selfishness, when in reality, it's an act of love. If you spent most of your life taking care of others, putting yourself first might feel wrong. Maybe it feels selfish, lazy, or like you're letting people down. So even when you do try to rest, something in you gets restless. Guilt creeps in. You wonder if you're being too much. But here's the truth. Self-care isn't selfish, it's survival. And more than that, it's love, not for others, but for you. When no one modeled care for themselves, you probably didn't learn how to do it either. You watched people push through exhaustion, ignore their needs, and wear their suffering like a badge of honor. So now, when you rest, breathe, or say no, it feels like you're breaking a rule. But the only rule you're breaking is the one that says love is only real when it costs you your well-being. You don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to apologize for needing space. Taking care of your body, your heart, and your mind is not a luxury. It's a responsibility. Because the truth is, you can't keep pouring from an empty cup. You can't keep sacrificing yourself for people who would rather see you drained than whole. Love is not about how much you suffer. It's about how much you can stay present and honest with yourself. Start by finding small ways to care for yourself that feel doable. Maybe it's saying no to a commitment that drains you. Maybe it's taking a walk without your phone. Maybe it's just letting yourself breathe for 5 quiet minutes. The size doesn't matter. It's the intention that heals. Every act of care tells your nervous system, I'm worth showing up for. And when you begin to truly believe that, something shifts. You stop trying to prove your worth through exhaustion. You begin to love the parts of you that once felt invisible. And deep within all of that, there's still someone quietly waiting. Someone who never stopped hoping you'd return. There's a part of you that never really grew up. Not because you're immature, but because they were never truly seen. That part is your inner child. The one who felt lonely, scared, or confused, and didn't have the words to ask for help. They're still there, waiting. Not for anyone else, but for you. Waiting to be heard, waiting to be hugged, waiting to finally feel safe, not just protected. Maybe you've spent years avoiding that younger version of yourself. You stayed busy, you stayed strong, but sometimes, when things slow down, when you're quiet, tired, or overwhelmed, that little voice comes back. It might sound like sadness with no clear reason, or anxiety that doesn't make sense. That's your inner child knocking, not to ruin your peace, but to finally find it. Meeting your inner child isn't some mystical process. It's simple, though not always easy. It means being gentle with yourself, talking to yourself with kindness, saying things you wish you had heard when you were small, like, you're safe now, or I'm here for you. You can even picture yourself as that child and offer them what they needed back then. This isn't silly. It's powerful. It's how healing begins. Your inner child doesn't need you to fix the past. They need you to stop abandoning them in the present. That part of you is still alive, in your fears, your dreams, your reactions. The more you connect with them, the more you reclaim the pieces of yourself that got left behind, and the more whole you become, not by being perfect, but by being real. And once you start hearing that inner voice with love instead of fear, you begin to see something deeper. Underneath all that avoidance, there's a pain you've been carrying for years, a pain that still needs space to heal, no matter how long it's been buried. You've come so far, you've survived, you've kept going, but if you're honest, there's still a part of you that avoids stopping. Because when you slow down, the pain you've been carrying starts to rise, and that's scary. It's easier to stay distracted, to keep moving, to keep fixing. But the truth is, what you avoid doesn't go away. It waits. And that pain you keep running from, it's not your enemy. It's your body asking for attention. Pain doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been wounded. And healing doesn't happen by pretending the wounds aren't there. It happens when you give them space to breathe. Maybe the idea of facing your pain feels overwhelming. That's okay. You don't have to dive into the deep end. Just take one step. Name what hurts. Let a tear fall. Let a memory rise. Let yourself feel what you were never allowed to. Avoidance is a clever trick we use to stay safe. But healing asks us to stop running. Not all at once, but slowly, gently. You don't have to face everything alone. Maybe it's time to talk to someone, to write it out, to sit in silence and ask, what part of me still needs care? That simple question can unlock what years of avoidance have kept frozen. There's no shame in hurting, no weakness in needing time. What you've been through matters, your story matters, and you are allowed to feel, to cry, to grieve, to scream, to rest. Healing isn't a straight path, it's a winding journey back to yourself. And every time you choose to stop avoiding, even just for a moment, you open a door to freedom. Because at the end of the day, this journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally coming home to the person you were always meant to be. Now that you've seen the truth behind why your inner child still feels abandoned, the question becomes, what are you going to do with this? Will you keep pushing your feelings aside, pretending you're okay when you're not? Or will you finally start offering yourself the care, presence, and love that you've needed all along? Because here's the thing, no one's coming to save that younger version of you. But you can. You're not too late, you're not too damaged, and you're not alone in this. Every time you choose to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I need right now? You're doing something powerful. You're breaking the pattern. You're showing up for someone who never had that before. You. So ask yourself, what would it look like to stop abandoning yourself? What kind of relationships would you attract if you stopped hiding your emotions? What would change if you believed, truly believed, that your needs matter? This isn't just another video. It's a doorway, one you can walk through, if you're ready. So take that step. Write in the comments, what part of this message spoke to you the most? What's something you're going to start doing differently starting today? And if this video stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because you're not done healing yet, and neither are we. There's more waiting for you. More truth, more freedom, more you.